Tonight, President Trump just hours away from landing in Singapore for his historic summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight, and thank you again for making Justice #1 again last week. The summit that could change the course of history is just days away. And tonight, we're talking about it with White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley, Congressman Darrell Issa, and Governor Mike Huckabee, and more. But first, my opening statement. As our president is primed to do what no other president has ever come close to doing in the history of this country with North Korea, there are many in the mainstream media, cable news networks, and left-wing liberals who are rooting for him to fail. When it comes to Donald Trump, hate is their daily fare. They hate him so much, they want him to fail. Peace be damned. The success doesn't matter, nor does whether they benefit from it. If he doesn't get credit for being one of the smartest, most clever, and successful negotiator presidents of all time, then we will know for sure what it's about and who they are. They're not just haters, and this is about more than just politics. They're rooting for America's failure, and that is un-American. Take a look at how they reacted a few weeks ago when the president sent a letter to North Korean dictator canceling the proposed June 12 summit in Singapore.
We're trapped in a one-man national security policy from hell. He blindsides his allies. He doesn't consult with Congress. As far as we know, he didn't consult with his own National Security Council. He dictates this bizarre, actually embarrassing letter.
It has always been a little hard to believe that Donald Trump was going to become the first U.S. president ever to meet a dictator of North Korea. The effort to bring that meeting about has been chaotic and disorganized and sometimes nonsensical from the start.
Big surprise, the impossible dream turned out to be an impossible dream. President Trump canceled the June 12th summit meeting with North Korea because, according to NBC News, he was afraid the North Koreans would cancel the summit, so he wanted to beat them to it.
Beat them to it? Really? We finally have a president who has a chutzpah to tell this dictator to buzz off. No pun on his haircut. We get 3 American hostages back. The president hasn't lifted any sanctions and is prepared to impose new debilitating economic sanctions pending the outcome of the summit. Compare this to our last failure of a president who sent love letters to the Ayatollah begging Iran to come back and then paid him off with tons of cash and euros on pallets and unmarked planes. And how does dictator Kim Jong-un react to the strength the president showed by pulling out of the summit? He crawls back in front of the world and asks for the summit to be back on. Our president is on schedule to forge a relationship with North Korea in Singapore that will cause Pyongyang to dismantle its nuclear weapons. The ones that they've been building up ever since the Bill Clinton days, when he wanted to give Kim Jong-il wads of cash. And as he beat his chest parading around ICBMs when Obama was president, we did nothing. Well, nothing that mattered anyway. The Dems have been crying about nukes forever. And as this president openly negotiates for the safety and security of this nation and enhances our military strength, destroys ISIS, they still complain. They literally don't want to see him fix this. Take a look at this from The Economist. The headline, this is the cover, America's foreign policy. The wrecking ball the president is swinging on is the planet Earth. And Senator Chuck Schumer tweets this: with ICBMs and nuclear warheads in the hands of North Korea, the situation is far too dangerous for seat-of-the-pants negotiating. You know, Chuck, not for nothing, but it was your party that screwed this up to begin with. You have no idea how much advance work has been done. You're too busy criticizing the president or crying about people you don't even care or know. You simply can't comprehend the genius of Donald Trump, unless, of course, you were looking for a campaign contribution, but that was back then. And you can't comprehend Mike Pompeo, Our president has no fear. And according to Prime Minister Abe of Japan, who said it best, a major step forward is about to be taken. President Trump, you are about to make a new history. Not only Japan, but the whole international community is strongly looking forward for the United States North Korea summit to open doors toward peace and stability of Northeast Asia. There was a time when liberals were known as people who were all-inclusive. They were generous souls fighting for the common man to assure his success and safety. But now, they're not interested in success. No, they're just angry. In fact, they're furious. We have a president who steamrolls the economy to historic heights, consumer confidence at an 18-year high, a stock market hitting record highs, tax cuts for everyone. And unemployment is not just down. There are actually more jobs and there are people to fill them. Did you hear what I just said? More jobs available than there are people to fill them. African-American unemployment is at its lowest in the history of this country. And the same with Hispanics. Our businesses will be able to compete again as we get our mojo back on the world stage. Take a look at these pictures from the G7. Our president is in the middle of every photo. The man is center stage. World leaders are all over him. The questions are to him. He is dominating the G7. America is back, folks. The truth, however, is a far cry from what stumbling Nancy said just a few weeks ago.
But this takes preparation. This takes knowledge. This takes judgment. And clearly, it takes preparation, which the president didn't make. It's clear he didn't know what he was getting into.
Sweetheart, as the president said himself, he's been preparing for this his whole life. And not prepared? You can't begin to comprehend the success and the benefits we will reap from the meeting that we've been waiting a lifetime for. There was a time when America celebrated successes together, when we came out with our kids on the streets and parades, waving our flags and teaching our children the importance of patriotism. Donald Trump is bringing America back in front of our eyes, and it's time for the un-American haters to get on board. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now with reaction to my opening statement and all of the developing news tonight, Deputy Press Secretary in the White House, Hogan Gidley. All right, Hogan, before we get to the North Korea summit, President Trump doing what he does best, causing a bit of disruption tonight with this tweet. It was sent after he left the G7 summit about Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The president saying, quote, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada acted so meek and mild during our G7 meetings, only to give a news conference after I left saying that U.S. tariffs were kind of insulting and that he will not be pushed around. Very dishonest and weak. Our tariffs are in response to his 270% on dairy. Trudeau then responded saying Canada won't be pushed around. Hogan, what's going on here?
Obviously, I'm in Washington, D.C. tonight, Judge. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm not at the G7. I wasn't in the meeting. But what I do know about this president is he's the same behind closed doors as he is out in front of the cameras talking to the American people. And what he did in those meetings, I've talked to Larry Kudlow already this evening. He gave me a brief coming out of the summit. And he said, listen, the president was on fire in those meetings. He was tough. He was honest. He told the world community we were not going to be the world's piggy bank anymore. We weren't going to be taken advantage of anymore. And it was time to open up trade. It was time to be free. It was time to be fair. That's what the president was behind the scenes. And now you see when he comes out, he says the same thing in public. This is where this president is because he wants to defend the American worker. They've been taking it in the teeth for decades.
Right.
We're in this position now because of bureaucrats and beltway politicians who have allowed us to get here, and he's going to fix it.
You know, Hogan, it reminds me of the NATO issue when, you know, right to their faces, he said, you guys aren't paying their fair share. And then, you know, it's that kind of tough love, you might call it, that gets them to pay up a bit. But, you know, Hogan, I want to talk about North Korea, and I want to talk about my open and what I was saying. Am I wrong? Are there people on the left who are actually cheering for the president and rooting for him to fail?
Well, you've tapped into something here, Judge. So many people on the left hate this president more than they love this country.
Yeah.
And it's obvious because the things they've been crying about for decades. This president comes in and has had record-setting accomplishments in record-setting time, fixing all of the things they've been bemoaning for so long. And now all of a sudden they don't want it to be fixed. And instead, they'd rather attack this president as opposed to the policy, him fixing the things that have made this country now back in the positive, in the red on the economy, back respected and loved on the international stage. We weren't like that under Barack Obama. We're like that now because of this president.
But we didn't do that to Barack Obama when everything was, you went to hell in a handbasket. I mean, there was no employment. Everybody was fighting with everybody else in terms of some of the issues going on back then. But even more than that, it's like they're not worried about being hypocrites. They're beyond that. They don't even care about being un-American.
They're just so blinded by their hatred for Donald Trump personally. It doesn't matter that he's making people, he's rising everybody in this country. 80% of the people, middle class, getting tax cuts and them calling it crumbs. Yeah. And then they're running on a platform of taking the tax cuts away, taking more of Americans' money. It's incredible. They're literally apologizing for MS-13 gang members whose
who
motto
are animals, I'm happy to say.
is kill, rape, and control. It's incredible.
One of the things I noticed today was Dennis Rodman said that to all Americans and the rest of the world, I'm honored to call POTUS my friend. He's one of the best negotiators of all time. And I don't have it in front of me, but I think I'm reading it properly. Now, you know he's going to get pushback from that. Here's Dennis Rodman, who's a pal of Kim Jong-un. I'm not even going to touch that one. But he's so proud of our president. He's signaling to Kim Jong-un, hey, this is a great thing. And all you Americans, you know, you're not appreciating him either.
Well, Dennis Rodman knows what's best. I'll give him that because he was the best rebounder in the history of basketball. And he knows now the best negotiator on the planet, and that's Donald Trump. This guy is standing up for the American people like no president in history and like no politician who promised they would for decades.
You know
He's
why?
helping out the American people,
you know
and that's
why,
what it's all
Hogan?
about.
I thought about this the other day. He's not beholden to anyone. It was one of the reasons that we put him in the Oval. He doesn't owe anybody anything. It's just for us. But I want to keep moving. This week, a lot of information came out of Texas regarding illegal immigrants and the crime numbers, and it speaks to the sanctuary city issue. I had no idea the numbers were like this. Give the viewers an idea of what we're talking about.
It's incredible. The president wants to show transparency and sunlight on just the problem we face in this country with illegal immigration. Barack Obama wanted no part of these numbers. The numbers came back from DOJ and DHS, and just in Texas alone, there are more than 250,000 people booked in Texas jails, and those 250,000 people committed more than 633,000 instances of crime. 80,000 drug charges, 80,000 assaults, 45,000 aggravated assaults, 1,500 murders, 7,000 sexual assaults. We are not getting the best of the best from these other countries. We're getting the worst of the worst. And I'll tell you this, the sad part is these crimes are 100% preventable. All you have to do is close the loopholes in the law, and we don't have this crime rampant throughout this country.
And you know what? There are politicians who want to make their states, sanctuary cities. They want to protect these people. And I got to do a show on this. And these are the people that we're letting in and giving protection, and are like a 65-year-old woman who was raped by a guy who was deported 20 times.
Right. You're talking about someone in the state of Oregon, and that's Senator Merkley. He was out doing some political grandstanding, and he was deriding and lying to the American people about, quite frankly, common, ordinary practices of immigration law in this country, and absolutely running down the DOJ and CBP. It's absolutely incredible what this man was doing.
But Hogan and Gidley, we're going to have you back to talk about it. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. And Governor Mike Huckabee's still on deck tonight. Plus, what can the president get out of Tuesday's summit? Congressman Darrell Issa is standing by live to talk about it. More justice in a moment, including a special treat. So here I am in Manhattan with my favorite cab and my favorite cabbie, and I'm going around trying to figure out if the president is going to be able to get little rocket man to give up his rockets. Stay tuned.
Nick. Unknown territory in the truest sense, but I really feel confident. I feel that Kim Jong-un wants to do something great for his people, and he has that opportunity, and he won't have that opportunity again.
We're on the brink of history tonight as President Trump heads to Singapore for the summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Joining me now with reaction, Congressman Darrell Issa, a member of the House Foreign Affairs, Oversight, and Judiciary Committees. All right, good evening, Congressman. Thanks so much for being here. So, as I said, we are on the brink of a very historic summit. I mean, you've been in Congress for many, many years. A lot of people have talked about North Korea, and yet for the first time, we have a president who's actually going to meet the dictator of North Korea.
Well, he's not only going to meet the dictator, but he's meeting him on his terms in a place of the president's choosing after the harshest sanctions ever, one that actually began to strangle the economic underpinnings of the regime. And after 67 years, the president is saying, we're not going to put up with the status quo. You either make a deal or we're going to strangle you. And that's a deal that this dictator, if you will, has to take.
Why couldn't other presidents have said that? What was so difficult about it?
You know, one of the challenges that other presidents face that President Trump doesn't is they want to be seen in history somehow as not making mistakes. President Trump is more than willing to break a few eggs to make an omelet. In this case, he was willing to demand that they actually strangle the economy of North Korea, not give them subsidies the way President Clinton did. And the reason simply is it only takes common sense, and the president has a great deal of common sense to know that everything we've tried for 67 years doesn't work. So let's try what we haven't tried.
You know, and it is amazing. I mean, he is a man who literally has no fear. I mean, I'm convinced he'd walk in a den of lions and come out the winner. But anyway, let's talk about this. The report that's coming out from the Inspector General this week, and indications are that Comey is going to be called insubordinate. I mean, big deal. That means nothing in terms of, I think, some of the wrongs that are clear to anyone who has an understanding of the law. What say you?
Well, what I'd say is that it's going to, in my opinion, justify and then some the firing of this person who made decisions that he could do what he wanted to do. And not just in the case of the actions with this president, but even beforehand, time and time again, Comey from day one assumed that he could do whatever he wanted. You might remember he subpoenaed, tried to force Apple to actually give up their source code and write a program so they could spy on America. And he claimed under oath before our committee that there was no way to work around it. And a matter of weeks later, for a few $100s, a professor said, oh, no, here's how you work around it.
You know, what is with the guy? Is he incapable of telling the truth? I mean, you know, the whole idea about, you know, I had to reopen the Hillary case because, you know, it was the right thing to do. Baloney. NYPD and the field office, FBI, was going to out him because the sex holic there, Anthony Weiner, had classified emails on his computer.
Well, you know, this is an example where somebody gets to the top and then they decide that they don't have to play by the rules that were written for others. And by the way, you saw it under Comey. It went all the way down to a whole host of other people at the Department of Justice and obviously at the FBI. And this is what the president's facing is, on one hand, he's got this accusers, if you will, with a false assumption to begin with. And on the other hand, what he has is he has a Justice Department that needs reformed. It needed to go the exact opposite way it went under both Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch.
Okay, it doesn't need reform, Congressman. It needs people who will enforce the law. Now, let me ask you this.
Sure.
You've got McCabe saying, I'm not going to testify before Senate Judiciary unless you give me immunity. I imagine it's use immunity because he doesn't want to be indicted because they're looking at him. Let's assume McCabe is going after Trump. I mean, what are you going to give me? When I was a DA, you only got immunity, give me something. Otherwise, take a hike. Now, assuming he's got something against Comey, what if he's got something against Obama, who was in the Department of Justice to go after it?
Well, this is exactly the problem we have, is that you need a proffer, your term, that you're going to know what you're going to get before you offer immunity. You know, with Lois Lerner, she wanted immunity, but all she would tell us was she was innocent. If he has something to really deliver, I certainly believe it should be considered. Oddly enough, though, in order to give immunity, the Senate has to go and give notice to the Department of Justice and tell them what it's about. So that may be a little more ticklish than you can think of.
Right, right. And you know what the scary part of it is? If he does get the immunity and the proffer is one that not only, you know, implicates someone above him, but someone 2 levels above him, who's going to prosecute the case? There's no one. You got Rod Rosenstein, who is, as far as I'm concerned, he should not have that job. He should not be in that position. This is all messed up.
Judge, the American people prosecuted the last administration in an election of President Trump. And quite candidly, if the American people have the truth, they will find the last administration and the Democrats guilty again. And to be honest, the ballot box is the best way to get the kind of conviction that changes America.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Congressman Darrell Issa. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
And Mike Huckabee is coming up. Plus, I hail a cab for street justice. And next, who needs Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un? We've got Dan Bongino and Chris Hahn. Can I broker a peace deal between these two guys? The panel is next.
Does this map show?
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Anita Vogel. President Trump tweeting that the U.S. will not endorse the new joint statement by the Group of 7 nations after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called U.S. tariffs insulting. Trudeau made the comments after the president had left this weekend's G7 summit for Singapore. The president also slamming the Canadian leader as, quote, very dishonest and weak. An American special operations soldier has been killed and 4 others wounded during a counter-terror operation in Somalia. The al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab claiming responsibility. President Trump tweeting, quote, my thoughts and prayers are with the family of the serviceman who was killed and his fellow servicemen who were wounded in Somalia. They are truly all heroes. I'm Anita Vogel in Los Angeles. Now let's get you back to justice with Judge Jeanine.
You all heard my opening statement, the liberal media rooting for America to fail. And to continue with that theme, it doesn't get much more un-American than this.
I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it, because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. Yeah. So please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
Let's ask my panel their reaction to that and so much more. Joining me now, NRA TV contributor, former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino, and former aide to Chuck Schumer, radio talk show host Chris Hahn. All right, you know what? It is amazing. Bring on the recession, Chris. What's that about?
Oh, I don't agree with that. I'm not rooting for him to fail in North Korea. I hope he gets along better with Kim Jong-un than he did with Justin Trudeau this week. But look, I'd like to see some successes out of that summit. I think the whole world would like to see some successes out of that summit. And I don't think it's going to take a recession to defeat Donald Trump in 2 years. But let's hope that we continue with a good economy so people can prosper.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. You know, if the president does do well in Singapore, and I think even he said that there will be several additional meetings, but right now Kim Jong-un has given us 3 hostages. He's agreed to denuclearize. He's actually meeting. And we've got Abe, who's singing the praises of President Trump. Will the Democrats or the left, forget the Democrats, the leftists, will they give the president credit for something no other president has been able to do?
No, not at all, Judge. And, I'm glad you made the distinction because it isn't all Democrats. There are some sane Democrats left. The radical left, though, has lost their minds. Judge, this has been the gift of Donald Trump. He's got the radical left showing America who they really are. So far, Judge, we know the radical left is on the side of North Korea, MS-13, Hamas. Nancy Pelosi's now cheering high unemployment the other day, and we got Bill Maher cheering for a recession. This is who the radical left always was. It took Donald Trump for them to show their butts to everyone. This is who they are.
Go ahead, Chris.
Dan, I think we both know that Bill Maher was basically pointing out that the economy determines presidential elections. It might not determine a midterm election. It sure didn't for Obama. The economy had turned by the time the midterms came. But it does determine presidential elections. So he was just expressing that in a very comical way. I don't root for a bad economy, and I will give the president credit.
Chris,
hold on, Dan. I will give the president credit if he does do well in North Korea this week. And I think the whole world will, but he's got to do well. And it's got to be better than the Iran deal.
But Chris, that's not funny, though. I'm sorry. That's not a joke. Chris, listen, let's just be candid about this. There are Americans in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan that voted for Donald Trump for the first time. They voted for Donald Trump because finally there's a collective identity he's celebrating. You know what that collective identity was? America's going to win. Now we got people on the other side, Bill Maher, with a significant platform. He's not a small timer here. On HBO, clamoring for a recession and has presided over the worst recovery from a recession in modern American history. Those are statistical facts. Dispute them at your own peril.
That's just not true.
He's
averaged statistically not true.
Chris, you don't know the numbers.
Stock market
He's averaged less than 2% GDP growth. I'm not talking about the stock market.
It was look. You know what? Let's listen to Nancy Pelosi. What she has to say.
Hip hip hooray! Unemployment is down. What does that mean to me in my life? I need a bigger paycheck.
What's with this woman and crumbs and hip hip hooray? She doesn't want people to get a tax cut. She doesn't want people to get jobs. What is wrong with them, Chris?
Well, unemployment was at 4.5% when this president took office, or maybe 4.8. Let's see where it is when he finishes. Okay, it is definitely where it is when he finishes. Okay, it is definitely down. I will give him some credit for that.
There are more jobs than there are people to fill them.
Paychecks going up.
Go ahead, Dan.
Chris, listen, you're saying things that are not true. So, by the way, I'm not going to let you go on. Barack Obama has presided over the worst recovery from a recession in American history. That's a fact.
True.
You need to do some homework on it. And secondly, it is true. They measure it on GDP growth, not the stock market.
Right.
Here's another point on this, too. Where are the Democrats going to go, Judge? And Chris, they have nowhere to go with this. They can't celebrate the economy because not one of them voted for the tax cuts that led to this vibrant growth with the regulatory reform.
That's going to burn
and then secondly,
the economy was growing before Trump took office. Please.
The economy, Chris, the economy's grown throughout American history. It's on we measure things by the margin, not grow or not.
Yeah.
We measure it by how much.
He had 2 quarters of above 2.5%. Let's see how he does in the long term.
Wait, time out. Judge, Chris, let me ask you a quick question. What was the growth rate Barack Obama handed Donald Trump? You know everything. Tell me, what was it?
The fourth quarter of 2000.
What was
the fourth quarter of 2016 was 2.75%.
No, you don't know the numbers.
He averaged about 2.5% hold on a minute. I do know my numbers. He averaged 2.5% every single year. And this president has averaged about 2.8%.
Cut. All right, guys, let me ask you this. Chris, I'll start with you. Is a president prepared? Nancy Pelosi says he's not prepared to meet with Kim Jong-un. And who's the other one who said Kim Jong-un is going to outsmart him? Go ahead, Chris. Is Trump prepared?
Well, I don't know that Kim Jong-un's going to outsmart him, but I doubt he's prepared. I mean, the president does not prepare. He's an improv comic. He goes out there and he just reacts to what's in front of him, and that's what he will do in this summit. Who he is.
This is fun. We're coming from Democrats, Judge. Did Barack Obama prepare when he got up there and he set the Syrian red line, which they crossed just days? Did he prepare when he told us that the Russians had removed the chemical weapons from Syria? Remember that?
Over it.
Nothing to worry about. There was a whole lot of preparation
back when Congress
in that
was a check on the president.
Donald Trump has been a welcome change from the pathetic, grotesque 8-year foreign policy, a retreat from Barack Obama.
All right,
Thank
guys,
God.
I gotta wrap. But Dan Bongino and Chris Hahn. Chris, I want to ask you one question. The president succeeds.
Go ahead.
Democrats are going to lose 2018, aren't they?
No. He's not going to win Congress in 2018 under any circumstance. I wish him well there, but he's got no chance of holding Congress.
Dan Bongino, Chris Hahn, thanks so much, guys. And which CNN talking head got me most fired up this week? Governor Mike Huckabee is next with the most outrageous statements of the week. Don't miss this. CNN's Jeffrey Toobin says that President Trump's pardon of black people are just great theater and suggesting the president still wants to fight with black people. Take a look at this.
By fighting with the NFL players, by fighting with the UCLA basketball players, by his comments in Charlottesville, President Trump gets to fight with black people, which he thinks is a great advantage politically. And, you know, this is not an olive branch. This is a more opportunity to define
Jeffrey, you don't think he's...
Here with reaction to this and more outrageous stories of the week, former Arkansas governor, Fox News contributor, host of Huckabee, Saturday and Sunday on TBN, Mike Huckabee. Good evening, Governor. And what say you about Jeffrey Toobin saying that the president just wants to fight with black people?
Well, Judge, I didn't realize Jeffrey Toobin was African-American. I guess he isn't, but he is identifying now as an African-American so that he can be the spokesman for the African-American people in America, even the ones who supported Donald Trump, and an increasing number of them are.
Yes.
And when he makes this comment about the pardons being theater, let me tell you something. That was one heck of a show for Alice Johnson and her family. It wasn't just theater to them. It was a family reunion, and they're glad that a president had the guts to, right in the middle of his term, not the last 15 minutes when he was in the White House, but in the middle of his term, see something that was an injustice and to correct it, and to do it in a very public way. I thought it was terrific. And I'm sorry Jeff Toobin can't find some pleasure in letting a great-grandmother get off of a life without parole sentence for a nonviolent first offense.
First offense, and that is the key. And, you know, what's interesting, as you say, is more African Americans are coming on board. I was just saying Dennis Rodman, who's tweeting about how the president's a great friend of his, and so is Kim Jong-un, and the president's going to go over there and cut a deal. You know, Kanye West, all that stuff, the rapper Chance, you know, so maybe the pushback isn't going to be as bad as it was. But let's keep moving on this thing. I'm going to pull up a cover of Time envisions the president in a crown and a robe. You see it there on the right side of the screen. And it says, King Me. What's your reaction to that?
Time has become so irrelevant, they ought to rename the magazine Timed Out. They no longer really are even making good sense. What was this supposed to mean anyway? That Donald Trump is a strong leader and they can't handle that? He's about to go into a historic summit meeting with a North Korean, the leader of the Hermit Kingdom, who begged to get that meeting back on the agenda after the president said, no, I don't think we're going to have it. I think it's incredibly significant that the president just walked out of G7, out of basically telling them, go where the good people don't, and said to them, you know, hey, we're not going to be chumps anymore. A lot of Americans are cheering for an American president who puts our country first.
But think of it, Governor. Why wouldn't they cheer for a man who's fighting for us? It's like I said earlier, he's not beholden to anyone but us, and they don't appreciate it.
I think that was the most important point you made earlier in the show, was that he is not a person who comes with so many hooks in him from all of the donor class. And it's one of the reasons that some people can't stand him, because they can't control him. They can't call him up and say, now, Mr. President, remember how much money that we raised for you.
Fix this.
And if you don't come through, he just basically says, no, you didn't get me here. A lot of ordinary people did, and I'm beholden to no one.
All right, let's go to the third one here. There's an MSNBC host. I want you to hear what she has to say.
Let me ask you, I mean, you know more about the Trump women, the Trump family than anyone. What do they do on a day like today? Are they just the most stoic human beings? Are they numb? Are they dead inside? Are they paid off? I mean, what's their deal?
Yes, and yes. But I think they do not see President Trump the way that all of us see President Trump. They have such a distorted image of who he is that they don't have the kind of reaction that we do. It's almost some sort of trick.
But they're mothers now. I mean, what kind of? I mean, and they seem to be raising nice kids. I mean, how do they wall it off?
Dead inside, paid off. What happened to these people?
Wow.
What is wrong with them?
Well, the Peacock Network has become the Turkey Network. I think they need to rename it BSNBC. And I just don't even know what happened to Nicole Wallace. They must have done a liberal lobotomy on her, because I've never seen anybody have such a personality change. And the insulting kind of condescension to say that Ivanka and Melania and all the women at the White House, which I guess would include my daughter.
I was just going to say, your daughter is certainly not dead inside, Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
No, she certainly is not. But neither is Ivanka, and neither is Melania, who is an extraordinary classy lady. I think they're just jealous that there are people who don't agree with their liberal nonsense. And, you know, you can be a woman in America as long as you're liberal, but God help you if you might be a conservative, because that just doesn't work with these people.
Governor Mike Huckabee, thank you so much for being with us this evening. And a very different street justice is coming up next.
You wouldn't expect
to hail a cab. I'll ask my cab driver, my favorite cab driver, Edward. Is the president going to be able to get Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, to give up his rockets?
Definitely.
Definitely. Why do so many people have a question about it?
Because they don't trust Trump. They don't appreciate what he's doing.
The president's going to Singapore. Who's going to get the better end of the deal, Kim Jong-un or Donald Trump?
Oh, only time will tell, Judge.
Oh, baloney. Who's it? No. Yes. Yeah, that's the cabbie. All right, we pay you to drive. Who's going to win? Donald Trump. Thank you. They said Donald Trump. Get in the cab. Whoa, stop. Come back here. Donald Trump's on his way to Singapore. Is he going to get Rocket Man to give up his rockets?
Doubtful.
Why?
He's Trump. I don't think he's really good for too much.
Is he giving up his rockets?
He probably should.
Of course he should, but will he?
Not to Trump, man. I don't think he's the best negotiator.
You think that Obama was going to get him to give up his rockets?
I'd give him to Obama.
Yeah, well, it didn't work. You think you'll be able to get Rocket Man to give up his rockets?
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay. Rocket Man, what does this guy want? I think he just wants to come to New York.
Maybe. Or Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, do you think Mar-a-Lago's enough of an incentive? Why is he willing to sail denuclearize and he released 3 Americans for nothing?
Do you think he's going to really go through with it? I don't.
I'm asking you.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Do you want him to?
It would be nice.
Yeah.
But we can't go into it being nonchalant thinking it's going to really happen.
You think so?
Yeah, I think he is.
Why do you think he's going to do it?
I think it's about time they realized they needed to change there.
Yeah?
And I think the world is kind of like getting on him a little bit. So I think it's time that he wants some change, but he's going to want something in return for that.
Well, I mean, who wouldn't give up their rocket?
Yeah? You think he'll get Rocket Man, Kim Jong-un, to give up his rockets?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. We're rooting for it. Yes.
Yes.
What? Okay, so what does he have to do to get him to give up his rockets?
Stay strong.
Stay strong. Do you think he'll have any trouble staying strong?
I think he's got a plan, and I think he can go out there and do it.
Yeah, we're rooting for him, praying for him.
He's the best negotiator.
Kim Jong-un to give up his rockets when he goes to Singapore?
If anybody can do it, he can.
You think he can get Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, to give up his rockets?
No.
Why? Yeah. No. All right, and if Donald Trump were in this cab, what would you say to him now?
I would just flip out. I would not know what to say. That would be my dream come true.
Edward, you've been talking nonstop. What do you mean you wouldn't know what to say?
Because I adore him. He gonna be second Ronald Reagan coming.
Just finished Street Justice cab version, New York City. Edward, how do you think we did?
I think we did excellent.
Sayonara, New York cab style.
Make America great again. Let's go, guys.
We'll be right back. Kim Jong-un to give up his rockets when he goes to Singapore?
If anybody can do it, he can.
You think he can get Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, to give up his rockets?
No.
Why? Yeah. No. All right, and if Donald Trump were in this cab, what would you say to him now?
I would just flip out. I would not know what to say. That would be my dream come true.
Edward, you've been talking nonstop. What do you mean you wouldn't know what to say?
Because I adore him. He gonna be second Ronald Reagan coming.
Just finished Street Justice cab version, New York City. Edward, how do you think we did?
I think we did excellent.
Sayonara, New York cab style.
Make America great again. Let's go, guys.
We'll be right back.